Lost in the storm. Pip, his legs still wobbly with youth, chased a monarch butterfly through the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. Its orange wings flashed like tiny embers against the green, leading him further and further from his mother's watchful gaze. He giggled, a soft, bleating sound, as he stumbled over a root, righting himself with a determined shake of his small tail. The butterfly danced onward, into a part of the whispering woods Pip had never ventured before. The air grew heavy, the playful breeze replaced by an unnerving stillness. The trees, once friendly giants, now seemed to huddle together, whispering secrets he couldn't understand. Suddenly, the sky turned an angry shade of grey. A low rumble echoed through the woods, vibrating in Pip's tiny hooves. He stopped chasing the butterfly, his ears twitching nervously. The air crackled with an unseen energy. A bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a deafening crash of thunder. Pip cried out, a high-pitched bleat of fear. "Mamar!" Rain began to fall, fat, heavy drops that splattered on the forest floor, turning the soft earth to mud. He spun around, trying to find his mother's familiar scent, but the wind whipped the rain into a frenzy, drowning out everything. "Mamar!" he cried again, his voice lost in the roar of the storm. He stumbled forward, blindly pushing through the undergrowth, his legs trembling with exhaustion and terror. The woods, once a place of sunshine and butterflies, had become a chaotic, unforgiving wilderness. He tripped over a fallen branch, landing hard in a puddle. The cold water shocked him, stealing his breath. He struggled to his feet, shivering uncontrollably. The only sound was the relentless drumming of the rain and the howling wind. He was alone. Lost in the storm. The K9 crew. "All right, team," O'Reilly said, his voice calm against the rising wind. Rain lashed against the windows of the SUV, blurring the already grey world outside. Max, Beller, and Gunnar sat at attention in their crates, their dark eyes fixed on him. Tonight's about vigilance. The storm's got everyone on edge, including the wildlife. Let's keep our eyes and ears open, and if someone needs help, we're there. He released them one by one, clipping leashes onto their harnesses. Max, the veteran, nudged Riley's hand, a silent reassurance. Beller, ever eager, whined softly, her nose twitching. Gunnar, the youngest, mirrored Beller's enthusiasm, bouncing lightly on his pores. They were a well-oiled machine, each with their own strengths, united by their loyalty and training. The patrol began, the SUV's tires splashing through flooded streets. The wind howled, mimicking a mournful cry. Riley rolled down the window slightly, the scent of wet earth and pine needles flooding the cabin. He watched his partners, their noses working, filtering the chaos of smells. Suddenly, Beller stiffened, her ears perked forward. A low growl rumbled in her chest. "What is it, girl?" Riley asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the radio. Beller pulled towards a thicket of trees bordering a park, her pace quickening. Max and Gunnar followed suit, their focus mirroring hers. The scent was faint, almost masked by the storm, but they had it. Riley followed, pushing through branches heavy with rainwater. Then, above the wind's shriek and the drumming rain, they heard it, or a weak, plaintive whimper. Max barked, a single, sharp sound, then pulled Riley forward, deeper into the woods. The whimpers grew louder, closer. Rounding a cluster of trees, Max stopped, nudging his nose towards a small, shivering form huddled beneath a bush. It was a fawn, barely bigger than Gunnar. Its eyes were wide with terror, its coat plastered to its thin frame. "Pip!" A furry rescue. The cries were weaker now, punctuated by the relentless drumming of the rain. Officer Riley tightened his grip on Bella's leash, the slick leather biting into his palm. "Easy, girl," he murmured, though she was already proceeding with caution, her nose twitching as she picked her way down the muddy bank towards the creek. Gunner, a black German shepherd, flanked them, his muscular frame tense, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The creek, usually a gentle trickle, was now a churning torrent of brown water. Riley spotted him first, a small, shivering form huddled beneath the skeletal branches of a willow tree, half submerged in the floodwater. "Pip!" His thin legs trembled, and his large, brown eyes were wide with terror. "Stay," Riley commanded, unclipping their leashes. Bella didn't hesitate. She splashed into the creek, the icy water barely slowing her down. Gunner, ever vigilant, positioned himself on the bank, scanning the surrounding woods, a silent promise of protection etched on his face. Bella reached Pip and nudged him gently with her nose, a soft, reassuring sound escaping her throat. Pip flinched, then leaned into her warmth, his cries subsiding to whimpers. Riley waded into the creek, the cold seeping through his boots. He reached Pip, his heart aching at the sight of the fawn's distress. "It's okay, little guy," he said, his voice calm and soothing. He carefully lifted Pip from the water, the fawn surprisingly light in his arms. He felt impossibly fragile. "Gunner, watch," he commanded as he stepped back onto the bank. Gunner gave a short bark, acknowledging the order. Riley knelt, quickly assessing Pip. He was soaked to the bone and shivering uncontrollably, but he didn't appear to be injured. "We need to get him warm," he said to Bella, who nudged Pip again, as if understanding every word. The storm raged around them, but in that moment, standing on the muddy bank with a shivering fawn in his arms and two loyal K9s by his side, Riley felt a surge of determination. They would get Pip through this. Welcome to the station. The patrol car smelled faintly of pine and something metallic. Riley had cranked the heat, and the warmth seeped into Pip's shivering body through the thick blanket. He was tucked securely in a box on the passenger seat, his large, liquid eyes fixed on Riley. "Almost there, little guy," Riley murmured, glancing at Pip. "Welcome to the station. You'll be safe there." The station wasn't what Pip expected. He imagined cold, echoing halls and stern faces. Instead, as Riley carried him inside, he was met with the comforting aroma of roasted chicken and the rhythmic thump of tails against the floor. 3 enormous German shepherds, their fur gleaming under the fluorescent lights, rose from their beds. Their ears perked, and curious noses twitched as Riley approached. "Easy, guys," Riley chuckled, setting Pip's box down. "Meet our new guest." The dogs approached cautiously, their massive heads dipping low. There was no barking, no aggressive posturing, only gentle curiosity. One by one, they began to sniff Pip, their warm breath ruffling the soft fur on his head. A wet nose nudged his flank, then another. Licks, tentative at first, then more confident, washed over his face. Pip, overwhelmed but strangely comforted, trembled less. Riley placed a shallow bowl of milk near Pip's nose. "Go on, buddy. You must be starving." Pip hesitated, his eyes darting between Riley and the 3 watchful dogs. He hadn't eaten since. Well, he couldn't remember. The warmth of the room, the comforting presence of the animals, and the gentle coaxing in Riley's voice finally broke through his fear. He took a tentative sip, then another, lapping up the milk with surprising gusto. The dogs seemed satisfied, settling down around him like furry guardians, their eyes never leaving his small form. For the first time since he'd lost his mother, Pip felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't so alone after all. Learning the ropes and barks. With Bella's leash secured to his belt, Officer Riley crouched, giving Pip a reassuring scratch behind the ears. "Ready for a stroll, little feller? Let's see those tiny legs move." But keeping pace proved a feat. Pip had observed Beller, a sleek shadow, glued to Riley's side. His own limbs, however, felt more like unstable poles. He veered erratically, colliding with Beller's flank. A low, patient woof emanated from her, a canine correction to mind his manners. Riley chuckled, easing his speed. "Take it easy, Pip. You'll find your rhythm." A new challenge arose as Gunner, ever vigilant, unleashed a resonant bark from the yard's edge. Pip, startled by the sudden noise, instinctively sought refuge behind Riley's legs. Amused, Gunner trotted over, tail a happy metronome. He nudged Pip, then offered a softer, almost teasing bark. Pip, head cocked, scrutinized Gunner. Then, he attempted a bark of his own, a minuscule, high-pitched squeak that barely ruffled the air. It was meant to be a booming vocalization, he was certain. Gunner responded with an encouraging, albeit mirthful, bark. Riley ruffled the puppy's fur. "Almost there, buddy. Just needs a little power." Later, during playtime, Max, the most exuberant of the three, bounded toward Pip, a tennis ball bouncing in his grasp. Emboldened by his near-barking experience, Pip lowered his head and charged, trying to conjure Max's playful growls. Max, quick as a flash, dropped the ball, giving Pip a gentle swat with his paw, a gesture of playful dominance. Momentarily taken aback, Pip recovered and joined Max in chasing the ball, his earlier imitations forgotten in the sheer exhilaration of the game. He was learning the language of canines, the barks and playful nips, one clumsy step at a time. A dearly beloved story. The flash of the photographer's bulb made Pip blink. Officer Riley knelt beside him, one hand resting gently on Pip's back, guiding him to sit still. Around them, Kaiser, Gunner, and Willow sat at attention, their ears perked, every inch the disciplined K9 unit. Pip, however, resembled a fluffy, four-legged question mark. He kept trying to lick Kaiser's ear. "Just a little longer, Pip," Riley murmured, scratching behind the fawn's ears. The headline, he imagined, would be something saccharine like "The Orphan Fawn Finds Family in Local K9 Unit." The story was spreading like wildfire. The next day, the station was inundated. People stopped by all morning, bearing boxes of milk bones, squeaky toys, and even a hand-knitted sweater, far too large for Pip. The K9S, normally stoic, seemed to enjoy the attention, accepting head scratches with regal grace. Pip, overwhelmed, hid behind Riley's legs, only emerging to cautiously sniff at the offerings. That evening, watching the local news, Riley felt a knot form in his stomach. The feel-good story had taken a turn. A wildlife expert, Dr. Anya Sharma, was being interviewed. "While this heartwarming tale is certainly charming, we need to consider the long-term implications," a Dr. Sharma said, her expression serious. "This fawn is not learning essential deer behaviors. How to forage properly, how to react to predators. He's mimicking canines. He needs to be in the wild, learning from his own kind." The clip showed Pip attempting to bite a Kaiser's leg, Kaiser responding with a low, confused whine. Riley muted the television. He looked at Pip, now curled up asleep at the foot of his bed, twitching in his dreams. The expert was right. Pip wasn't learning how to be a deer. He was learning how to be a dog. And that, Riley realized, presented a problem he wasn't sure how to solve. The sweetness of the situation had soured, replaced by the bitter taste of responsibility. Wilderness training. Riley knelt, adjusting the tiny harness she'd fashioned for Pip. All right, little guy. Today we're learning to be a deer, not a dog. Pip tilted his head, ears twitching, clearly unimpressed. Max, ever eager to please, trotted ahead, nose to the ground. Riley pointed to a cluster of wild blueberries. Show him, boy. Show him what's good. Max, understanding perfectly, nudged the bush with his nose, then looked back at Pip expectantly. Pip tentatively sniffed a berry, then another, before finally gobbling a mouthful. Riley chuckled. Good job, Maximum. Now he knows it's not all kibble. Next, Beller took over. Riley positioned Pip near a thicket of trees. Beller, predator watch. Beller's playful demeanor vanished. Her ears perked up, her gaze intense, scanning the perimeter. She lowered her body slightly, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Pip, sensing the change, mimicked Bella's posture, his small body tense. That's it, Pip. Learn to read the signs. Trust your instincts. Riley felt a pang of guilt. This was survival, not a game of fetch. Gunner's turn was an obstacle course, fallen logs, shallow creeks, thorny bushes. Gunner bounded through it effortlessly, then waited patiently for Pip. Riley gently nudged Pip forward. Come on, Pip. Just like Gunner. Pip, hesitant at first, slowly navigated the course, stumbling occasionally, but never giving up. By the end, mud-splattered and panting, he stood proudly beside Gunner, who nudged him affectionately with his nose. Riley watched them, a knot forming in her stomach. Pip was adapting, learning. But was she doing the right thing? Every lesson drove home the fact that he belonged in the wild, not in a kennel, eating dog biscuits. The sun dipped below the trees, casting long shadows. All right, team, as she said, trying to sound cheerful, a time to head back. But the weight of her decision felt heavier than ever. The wolf's challenge. Sunlight, fractured by the canopy above, painted shifting patterns on the ground as Officer Riley watched Pip hone his agility. The growing fawn, noticeably bigger now, navigated the sapling obstacle course Riley had painstakingly created, a miniature forest of his own design. Max, Beller, and Gunner, ever vigilant, bounded around him, playful nips serving as gentle reminders of safe limits. A ghost of a smile touched Riley's lips, an infrequent visitor these days, chased away by the persistent guilt of delaying Pip's inevitable return to his true home. The air itself seemed to thrum as a guttural growl ripped through the peaceful scene, a primal vibration that resonated deep within Riley. From the shadowy fringe of the woods, a wolf materialized, its gaze laser-locked on Pip. A roar, predatory hunger blazed in its eyes. The K9s, as if by instinct, instantly shed their playful demeanor. They coalesced into a protective bulwark between Pip and the threat, hackles raised like bristles, teeth bared in silent defiance. Tension coiled thick in the air. Pip, initially caught off guard, seemed to grasp the danger. He dipped his head, his large, liquid eyes reflecting a blend of fear and nascent courage. The wolf, a study in lethal grace, circled, probing for weakness, the growl escalating into a menacing snarl. Then, a lightning strike of movement, the wolf lunged. Max intercepted, jaws snapping shut with ferocious intent. Beller and Gunner flanked the attacker, a chorus of furious barks erupting from their chests. Pip, sparked by their courage, retaliated with a surprising burst of speed, his sharp hooves connecting with the wolf's flank in a stunning counterattack. A yelp of surprise escaped the wolf as it stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. The combined force, the K9's fierce protection and Pip's unexpected offensive, proved too much. With a final, baleful stare, the wolf retreated, vanishing into the dense undergrowth as quickly as it had appeared. The K9S, panting hard, nuzzled Pip, meticulously checking for any sign of injury. Riley hurried to them, his heart hammering against his ribs. He knelt, his hands gently sweeping over Pip's coat, a wave of relief washing over him as he found no broken skin. He ruffled the soft fur between the fawn's ears. "Good job, Pip. You all did great." But he knew this skirmish was merely a prelude. The untamed world beckoned, and its call would eventually be irresistible. Back to the woods. "He's ready, Riley," the wildlife expert said, clipboard tucked under her arm. That wolf encounter proved it. He defended himself. Instinct took over. Riley swallowed, the knot in his stomach tightening. He knew it was coming, had known since the moment they'd found the tiny fawn shivering in the rain. But knowing didn't make it any easier. He glanced at Pip, now nearly full-grown, his spots fading into the rich brown of his summer coat. Pip was nudging Kaiser, the oldest of the K9S, his velvety antlers just clearing Kaiser's back. "Yeah," Riley mumbled, kicking at a loose pebble. "Guess so." He felt a ridiculous lump forming in his throat. He'd kept Pip too long, let his own loneliness get in the way of what was best. Guilt gnawed at him. The release point was a familiar clearing, a place Pip had often visited on supervised walks. The dogs, sensing the shift in atmosphere, were uncharacteristically quiet. Kaiser, usually boisterous, rested his head on Riley's leg, a low whine rumbling in his chest. Riley knelt, stroking Pip's soft muzzle. "Okay, buddy. Time to go home. Be careful, all right? And visit." He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, then opened them, forcing a smile. "Go on now. Get out of here." Pip seemed to understand. He nudged Riley's hand with his nose, then turned to the dogs. He bowed his head to each of them in turn, a playful dip that mirrored Kaiser's greeting to the pups. Then, with a powerful surge of his hind legs, he bounded into the woods, disappearing into the dappled sunlight. The silence that followed was deafening. Riley stood, his hand still outstretched, until Kaiser nudged him again, this time a comforting pressure. "Let's go, boy," Riley said, his voice hoarse. A week later, just after dawn, Riley was making coffee when he heard a familiar sound, the soft click of hooves on the concrete outside the kennel. He rushed out, and there he was, Pip, standing patiently by the gate, his breath misting in the cool morning air. He dipped his head in that familiar bow, first to Kaiser, then to Gunnar, and finally to young Anya, who yipped with delight and licked Pip's nose through the fence. Riley watched, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Pip was home.